Hello, hello. This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the movie that just came out with starring Jim Caviezel, The Sound of Freedom, and I saw it last night with my family. Usually they go to the movies every week, and I don't usually go to the movies because I just rather do other things with my time, but I thought it was an important movie to see, and it did look good, and so we went yesterday, and it was a really good movie. And I don't just say that because it's, an important sort of topic to talk about, or because I like Jim Caviezel or what stuff he's kind of been doing, or whatever I'm saying, or because it has some like Christian elements or whatever. The legit is a legit good quality film, and it is worth sitting through. So I want to talk about that. Also, a federal judge ended up blocking the Biden administration because they keep limiting free speech by not directly limiting it, like knock on your door and saying, hey, don't do that, or we're going to send you to jail or something, but by contacting social media companies and having them limit things like disinformation and other things like that, or misinformation. So they've been blocked. The White House is not okay with that. They're upset, and they're gonna push back, and we'll see where that kind of goes legally. But yeah, it's no secret. I think it's no secret that they worked with Twitter, for example, and Facebook, and especially with things like the Hunter Biden laptop, and imply that there was some misinformation out there, even knowing that it wasn't. So when they saw that, they kind of knew, like, oh, that's the thing that we should block, right? I think it was Zuckerberg, I think, admitted as much, but we know through the Twitter files that there's a lot of communication. So did I say sound of I saw someone write sound of freedom in all caps. I'm like, did I write it wrong? No, it looks good. I'm just concerned for a second because it's like all caps excitement. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you guys for popping in and joining me. To those who watch it back later. Also, I went down a rabbit hole today of asexuals. And did you know that asexuals were trying to fight for equal rights that I guess you don't feel that they're getting within the LGBT community? You might be like, what does that even mean? We'll go through it. I'm gonna have you hop on to go down the rabbit hole with me. Some interesting things to talk about today. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteens.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. Please make sure that you drop in your email on the sites and get different emails and stuff. And make sure you follow me across my different social media platforms. The link should be in the description. Check out different merchandise that we have at the store. And if you go to the merchandise page, you can see cool things like different, mugs and different shirts. It is actually, the day after Independence Day, the day that actually Frederick Douglass gave his "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" speech, which is a fantastic speech, by the way. So many people with bad takes about it just bothers me when there's so many people who just want to who are Americans who want to dunk on, Independence Day. It's really disheartening to see it from elected officials and stuff, but I don't want to jump in that today really so much. But there's different merch that you guys can see That's oh, that was for like fall. It's definitely not fall, but that's available there too. The pumpkin spice season meant to show this. The You Are Not That Special, and we have that in t-shirts and also mugs. But if you also go to the merchandise page, there's a banner located in my book website. I've written a lot of books, over 30 actually, but I have 17 that are published. 15 are nonfiction, 2 are fiction. I mean, no, I'm sorry, reverse. 15 are fiction and 2 are nonfiction. One of the nonfiction books, of course, is my book, Of Course God Is Blatantly Against Abortion, that's available on Barnes and Noble and also Amazon. So please go ahead and pick up your copy today if you have not read. And if you have and you liked it, go ahead and leave me a review. So I do have a meme today. It's not like super funny or anything like that, but I thought it was a good segue into the topic. So here we have, if you are familiar with the cartoon or the comic book Invincible, this is a pretty iconic scene. But in the meme itself, you see Disney in the background with Indiana Jones and Sound of Freedom, and says, "Look what they need to mimic a fraction of our power." So Indiana Jones is not doing good. Now, I didn't see it, so I can't speak to whether it was a good film or a bad film. People really didn't like the Crystal Skull movie. I didn't hate it. I know people hated the fact that there were aliens, and there's impractical sort of like fight scenes, but when is there not? I guess in these kind of films, but I didn't. I mean, there were scenarios that were just like, hmm? So I get people not liking it. It's just a popcorn flick, whatever. So maybe it's good, maybe it's not. There's things people were talking about that could have been cringy, but for people that I know that I watch, they say it's fun. But I think Disney is just in trouble. They're losing a lot of money on their films. They have these huge bloated budgets. Like, why spend $300 million? On these films. My friend, this is Savvy, reviewed it, and she said it was fun, but it was just missing something. She's like, it was missing its heart, I think. And then I told my sisters, like, maybe it's because Harrison Ford is just kind of done. Like, I mean, he did the Star Wars, and I'm like, and he seemed like he didn't want to do Star Wars. And there was a joke when he was on a late night, and they're like, how did you decide to do it? And they're like, the money. They have the money. And but he went there to just die the way that he did. I don't know. Like, I think you could have let Indy go, you know, um and you didn't necessarily need to make it, but it's there, it exists. People can go see it and it's fun. But to have 300 million dollar budget, um knowing that you put big budgets into other things and they're not doing well, and Disney has lost like close to $1 billion in failed projects. Strange World, whatever, failed big time. Lightyear failed big time. Which both those were woke, but the Strange World, on top of it being, I guess, woke or whatever, um it also, um I didn't see it. I heard people not love it, but at the same time, they also didn't market it a lot. And I don't think, from what I'm hearing, they didn't really market Elementals. If that was not doing well, I heard some people say that it was actually a pretty good movie, but they didn't really market that. Little Mermaid isn't going to make back its money. That was another big budget, like $250 million, and then plus 150 whatever for advertisement, marketing, and stuff. And the theaters take like half of that money, so they, even if they make more than 500 mil, well, I guess they really need to make about 700, right, 750 or something, to kind of just not go really in the hole or whatever. So I don't know, guys. Disney just keeps bombing, and so Lucasfilm, all that Disney Plus has not been profitable. But you get these little films that have these smaller budgets and whatnot, and they don't need to make a lot to make a big impact and to make somebody's payday. I don't know off the top of my head how much it costs, but I know that they already raked in like pre-sales and stuff. There was reports of them making like 10 mil, so that's good. I'm glad to hear that they have a marketing strategy of asking people to donate money for people to buy tickets so people can go get free tickets. Now, are the people who probably are taking free tickets who could just probably go themselves and buy their tickets, perhaps, but maybe they're people who wouldn't have gone if they hadn't gotten the free tickets, so they got a free ticket, so now they're in the seat and it's helping to boost sales. So it's a good sort of marketing ploy. It's also a good feel good thing because there are people who legitimately would like to go to the movies who can't afford to go to the movies. And I say that with like experience. There was a time in our family's life when it things were so tight and we could not. We didn't have cable, we didn't have anything like that, I think, at that time. And we could not go to the movies. We just couldn't afford it. And it was when uh I don't know if it was Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises that was out. I can't remember which one. Maybe it was Rises, but my uncle actually paid for us to go to the movies, and my older sister just broke down in tears. Batman's her favorite character, and so she was I laugh at her, I guess, now about this, but and then I guess because I like immediately did mock her as I told other people the story, and I looked at her like kind of like you're a freak, man. But she was just like, "We're watching Batman. Don't you know we're watching Batman?" I'm like, "Yeah, I see the title screen. It says Batman Begins." So yeah, I know we're watching Batman. It might have been Dark Knight. I don't remember. It was one of the two. Um, but we didn't have we legitimately didn't really have the money to go. And we're big comic book people, so it was a very nice gesture from my wonderful uncle, and a way to sow into our lives in a way that we clearly haven't forgotten, in a way that was really important to my sister. So there are people who um can't go to the movies. There are people who go to the movies and they ball out, as far as like they get the popcorn and they get the slushies and all that stuff, and they spend a fortune going out to enjoy their entertainment space. We don't do all that. We're the people who would sneak in like our own candy and stuff. So maybe my mom will buy popcorn every so often, but we buy our tickets, and that's essentially it. So she's in the chat. It was Dark Knight. uh yeah, it was Dark Knight. She said Dark Knight, a 2008 Dark Times. Yeah, so that was a rough time. So it's a really nice, beautiful thing for them to set that up for other people to see, and I do think it's an important movie. Now it's starring Jim Caviezel. A lot of people recognize Jim Caviezel because he, was Jesus, starred Jesus in the Passion of Christ film, and that movie, I would say, profoundly impacted and changed his life. And he was also in other really good films. Count of Monte Cristo. That movie is so good if you've never seen it. So good. It's one of my favorite films. Um, we were saying for the longest time after seeing that film that he could have played Iron Man. He would have been a really good Iron Man. But it comes down out of that balloon, that hot air balloon. If you've ever seen the film, it's just like it's just wonderful. He definitely had that swag, the Tony Stark swag. Um, he's also on the TV show Person of Interest, which I know my mom watched it and I didn't watch it. It was on TV for a while, but he's in this. The film is Sound of Freedom. Now, this movie was actually done in like 2018, so it was made like years ago. But they jumped through like every hurdle to try to get this out. So Angel Studios and Mel Gibson and other people like helped to try to get it to this point. So now it's in theaters. So not everywhere. I don't think it's in the UK. I don't think it's in Australia and other places. So it doesn't have like a worldwide release. Hopefully, if it does well here in the US. I think it's also out in Canada as well, I think. So if people keep watching it and seeing and talking about it, then it can do well. There's a lot of films that if it has people talking about it a lot, it can survive and have long legs in the theaters. The critics really didn't like uh Come Alive, of my life. Greatest Showman. I just started thinking of the song. Because critics did not like that film. I loved it. I saw it actually 5 times in theaters. Each time with my sister Katrina who's in the chat, and people saw it so many times that people kind of had to keep covering it and talk about it, and I would like look up the box office numbers to see how it was doing, and it just found really long legs because of how much people enjoyed it, even if critics wanted to dismiss it, which I don't think there was a lot of critics who had looked at this film for whatever reason. And so I don't know what the critic scores are right now for it, but it was legitimately a good film. Like the quality was good, the acting was good, the tone, the pacing, the suspense, the uneasiness that you felt, and it wasn't gratuitous with like violence or the content as far as like because it's about sex trafficking, and it didn't show anything, but it showed enough that you got the gist, which I appreciate because there's some folks who just want to give you stuff for shock value, and they feel that they just have to do that, and you don't have to go to that extreme, and they apparently didn't want to. And I don't know. We could have watched um if it went any further, but you definitely got the gist, and there was a really big uneasiness about everything that happened. So it's based off of events about a Tim Ballard who really did work with stopping, the people. I don't want to say the word because I don't want it to get flagged or something. People who, well, I guess traffic the young ones will say. And so it covers his stories. Now I don't know much about Ballard outside of seeing this film. I haven't gone on a deep dive or anything like that. But um I will say that I was crying. A lot of people were crying. I saw Tim Pool say it was a 10 out of 10 movie, and he said people in the theater were crying like for 45 minutes straight. I was crying basically like 5 minutes into the film, not like sobbing or something like that, but maybe it was 5-10 minutes because at the beginning when it opens up, and it's at the very beginning, so I don't feel like this is much of a spoiler, but um it shows his family that it focuses it around. And um there's a woman who comes to this house, and she's like an entertainment person, or claims to be an entertainment person, like a talent scout. And so she wants to recruit his daughter and his son, and so he drops them off, and then she starts like taking photos of the kids. And what got to me was how she was directing the kids to take the photos. Like the kid's shirt was buttoned up, so she like unbuttons one button, or she like, tells them how to pose with like their hips kind of protruding out, or she gives a little girl lipstick. And it was so eerie to me. And I automatically thought of Cole Sprouse. And Cole Sprouse, he was one of the twins on Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. I don't know which one is Zach or which one is Cody, but Cole is the one at the top. He's the one with the kind of smaller face. So he was also on Riverdale and some other films and stuff. He's kind of had a bit of a revival past couple of years. Well, consistently, I guess when he got into adulthood and stuff. But he, I saw an interview, and I can't find this interview. He was on a panel, and I've seen there's still stuff of interviews talking about the panel, and there's videos of people talking about the panel, and but I can't find where I originally saw it. Which I find a little suspicious, but I'm pretty sure I originally saw it on YouTube, but I can't find that video. But he was talking about how the industry, and he worked for Disney, how they would sexualize um not just the girls but also the boys, but they said they would do it to the girls at an earlier time than they would to the boys. And he brought this up, because uh he was responding to how people talk about how kids go off the rails, and how these stars go off the rails. And he's like, I don't want to judge people who go off the rail, because you don't know what kind of trauma that people experience while in the industry. And he said young kids really go through it, and you do have it, fame being a trauma also when you're older. You just kind of know how to deal with it a bit better, or hide, at least hide it a bit better. But he said the experience that he has, I guess, as a boy, is different than what these girls would have. So I don't know what all they do to these kids, and but the photo shoot, it just immediately made me think about what people put right in front of us right now. um and if people are abusing these kids that we see on TV, what do they do to these kids that we don't know? And if you read about some of these kids in their accounts, like Demi Lovato, which we talked about her, I was reading an article that covered a bit of this conversation, and they start talking about the experience of other Disney stars. And Demi Lovato has been through a lot with drug use and other things like that. We mentioned her because she had a song that was like talking about abortion rights and stuff. But she was sexually assaulted as a child, and she said she internalized a lot of shame as if it was her fault, and she said that's how she lost her virginity. Um, there's also Bella Thorne. Um, Bella Thorne was, I don't remember what TV show she was on. This wasn't my Disney era, but I've seen Bella in like other things. Like she was in the movie The Duff. She was like the mean girl, but she's had some issues that maybe you've seen, like kind of, out in the public or whatever. But she's someone who also suffered through that as well, and they're not the only ones. And again, these are people who they put on TV. People have made like different collages of the show the Ariana Grande was on, and just different things that she did. They're like, man, they really sexualized this girl, and she still kind of looked like a little girl, but she was a little girl. And the sort of skits that she was in, the positions that she would have, and um just really really creepy. So that was on Nickelodeon. But if these entertainment networks would be so awful again, what are the things that we don't see in the dark alleys, especially in other countries, but not just in other countries, stuff that happens here in the United States. So after the film, they talked about, there's a message from Jim Caviezel, and he talked about how Uncle Tom's Cabin helped to build a narrative and start a conversation that began to change people's hearts around this issue. So they said one thing about this movie that's so important to them is to start a conversation, have people talk about it. And I think we need to really analyze ourselves and what people voluntarily consume. Like people got really mad at Matt Walsh some years ago because he mentioned the popcorn industry. I think you guys can understand what I'm trying to say, and how people who get addicted to popcorn start at a very young age. Like I don't know, maybe it was like 9 to 11, something really really crazy. And his thing was like, if there's kids exposed to this stuff that's basically ruining their brains and addicting them to the stuff long term, um then we need to have, well, he thinks like s- Popcorn Hub and other places should be banned. I don't disagree with him. There was all these libertarians that were like pouncing on him for days and going back and forth and stuff. And he was at least making the argument that we need to have stronger um verification as far as your age. And people were pushing back against that because like, no, our liberty and stuff. And one thing that I appreciate about Jim Caviezel is he talks a lot about how things ought to be. How you there's things that you can do, and there's things that you ought not do. And if you have, some kind of addiction, I pray that you find deliverance from it. But um just because you can consent to something as an adult doesn't mean that there's not wild repercussions. And by the way, there are children on and even people who are trafficked on those kind of sites. They find that stuff all the time and have to plead to take it down. Um and there's other um ones besides like Popcorn Hub and whatever, but um that have inappropriate things on there. But I don't know all their names, especially not off the top of my head. But um also how we how not just for the entertainment, sexualizes and exploits these kids. I've mentioned many times how my dad didn't want us wearing certain things until certain ages and stuff, not because those things are inherently bad, but he just had it in his mind that he wanted to protect our innocence for as long as possible. And sometimes we see our kids and we think it's cute to just dress them like little adults, because I don't know, like they're dolls, and then you kind of want to have a matching doll set that looks like you, whatever. But you do still have to remember that they're kids. They're kids. And um there was the story do you guys remember that story about I don't remember which YMCA it was, but there was a trans woman who went to a woman's bathroom, and there was a minor in there showering. And she was really terrified and upset, and so she complained. And the media, actually local news, acted like, I don't know, the girl was crazy. They're like, oh, well, the thing is that this trans woman, she, fully transitioned. So yeah, I'm just like, that doesn't make him a woman. And so and she testified, and she talked about how her sisters or her cousins, or somebody young related to her, likes to go and to go swimming and stuff. And she just thought about, what if they were there and he was in there. And there are a lot of activists who rallied around the trans woman. But Redux did like a deep dive on this trans woman's social media, and there was some very inappropriate things on social media. Test about how, you know um can I say this word without kind of getting flagged? How into things you are. I guess you'll probably understand what I'm talking about. Um, and also liked quite a bit of photos and stuff about with young kids, but kind of dressed more adult, but they're young kids. So we have to guard our children, and guard our hearts and guard our children, and know that there's people there who want to corrupt them and abuse them and exploit them. And I know, gosh, it's an awful scary world. Someone was like, you think the world is perfect for kids? I'm like, I do not. And they said that because of my pro-life stance. Like, you think this world is perfect for kids or to raise babies with, but I'm like, no, I don't. If you follow me, I don't think that. If you follow the topics that we talk about, I don't think this world is perfect. I think this world is dark. I think it's evil. I think it's cruel, and I think it's fallen. I still think that life is worth living. I still think there's hope. I think the film was trying to give some hope, and there was hope in the film. There's hope when we restore these families, when we give these women their lives back, these men their lives back, when we reunite these families. There's hope, there's light, there is, but there's darkness, certainly. And but I think it's our job to resist it, and I think our job is to fight against it. So it's a tough subject matter, but again, it's not gratuitous in what they show. How brave of these actors to um participate, especially the children. who did a really good job. Like sometimes you have children actors and it's like, were you somebody's cousin or the director's kid? Or were you their brother's kid or something? And because you shouldn't be here, you're ruining the vibe and the realism. It wasn't like that. They were really good in the role. So you felt their heart, you felt Jim's heart. You know, so um I recommend go seeing it. Not just again because I think it's important content that people should be consuming and talking about and spreading awareness of, and not just because I support the mission, but I do think it's genuinely a good movie. You know, sometimes we're like, go see the movie. It's, go support. um, and the quality is not there. The quality's there. It's genuinely a good movie, and they do a great job with it. So, this is Sav. She reviews a lot of a movies. She said it was one of the best that she's seen this year. She goes to the movies at least once a week, probably twice a week or whatever, if there's stuff that she wants to see. But she reviews stuff all the time. She thought it was one of the best movies she's seen of the year. Tim Pool thought it was one of the best movies that he's seen this year. Um, I'm sorry, I'm just glancing at some of your comments. I think appreciate you guys being in the chat and being here and being part of this conversation. I know we talk about a lot of things that aren't you know things to always like laugh about and be rainbows and sunshine, but they're important to have. So my heart breaks for people in those positions, in those situations. Think about all the people who are trafficked crossing the border, who are sexually abused trying to cross the border, our open border, um that are being they're not coming with their parents, they're coming with coyotes. And a lot of people want to ignore that. Like when there was a report that came out, I don't remember the number, but right before the 2020 election, about how many children still weren't back with their parents. And it literally dropped like right before the second debate that Trump had with Biden. And so when they asked him about it, he's like, there's kids who didn't come with adults, they came with coyotes. And I felt so grieved for our country. I really did, because there were so many tweets, including from people who held like elected office, that began to tweet coyotes. How can a coyote bring a child across the border? Because they thought that he was talking about like Wile E. Coyote kind of coyotes, not animated, like animal coyotes, and didn't know that like these traffickers are called coyotes and stuff. So it's fine if you didn't know that information. Like I'm not if you're out there and you didn't know, like, oh, I didn't know they're called coyotes. That's fine if you didn't know. But to just the people who just unloaded on social media to mock Trump when he's totally right. And I'm like, so many people, their heart breaks when they see this stuff at the border, so much that this is like a single kind of issue that people will vote against him on. They run ads about this, and it's all so many, these people are talking about it, these women in the suburbs and stuff. But I'm like, you're so emotionally invested into this, but you don't even know that coyotes are bringing kids across the borders without their parents. That was something that was well known, or should have been well known very early on if you cared enough to watch some of the briefings. But um with DHS and stuff, but perhaps you just didn't like the administration enough to care to even watch them tell the truth, or talk about these situations. And maybe if you heard it, or when you heard it, you just kind of blotted it out because you just assume everything from their lips is a lie. But it just it's like, y'all didn't even know what these people are doing. But even like in the era of like Obama and stuff, when he was president, there'd be they'd be so quick to get people like out from like the cages and stuff. Because who built those cages, as Trump would say. um that they wouldn't really vet people, so the kids were trafficked. There was like a huge report that came out prior to Trump being in office about their policies and stuff. So this stuff happens not just, in Honduras and other places. That was where it kind of started in the film, and then they, you know bounced from different place to place to place. But it goes on in our country, and it goes on in the UK, and it goes on in France and Thailand, and all kinds of different places. These kids are moved and abused, and not just kids. They will snatch older women. There's um a place very popular. I don't know if this is still the case, but a major spot. I guess it's worth people knowing if you don't know. um and I'll say allegedly to cover my butt. Allegedly, there was an issue at our local mall, um Great Lakes Crossing, with people getting snatched with traffickers. Um uh, it One of my sisters asked somebody in law enforcement about it. Not a lawyer kind of person about law enforcement. They kind of tried to change the subject, kind of did a smooth kind of way. But yeah, we heard that allegedly was a good spot for that. So be careful even when you send your kids to the mall, and just let them kind of roam about. Make sure that you have conversations with them so they don't act in stupid manners like the girls from Taken. If you've ever seen that film, just giving people all kinds of different information. Make sure that there's some kind of buddy system in the very least. But they don't just they'll snatch older women too. They don't care. They'll get who they can get. So it's not just a child problem. So you got to guard your kids. I'm sorry if I'm scaring you today. But anyway, it was a really good movie. Go support it. Lastly, I want to say, I saw some people like trolling like account or whatever, and saying different stuff in different threads from Angel Studios as they were promoting the movie. And the people are just saying stuff like, I'm not seeing this QAnon kind of stuff. And I was just baffled. I'm like, do people not think that this is a large problem that is consistently happening? Like, there's some cute people out there that say, like, they believe in some crazy stuff. They do, but that doesn't mean that everything is like, especially with this particular topic, because it's not the only thing they believe. They believe some wild like election stuff. Um and I mean wild, guys. I know people, there's different levels of conspiracies that people have, but I heard some wild things. But it seemed like when there was something sexual in the news or something, people wanted to dismiss it as some kind of cute thing. Like, even when people were talking about the film Cuties, that was disturbing, because I heard the actual star of that film was like 11, and apparently they had a, quite the audition process. I'm like, how many girls did you watch? Little girls did you watch twerk until you got to the right one? So very disturbing. So there was this outrage, especially when Netflix first showed their poster for it, and there was outrage, and there was outrage from both sides of the aisle. But then the media was like, those right wing cute people, and I'm like, it's not only right wing people upset about 11-year-olds gyrating their pelvises and other things. And that is not only a conservative thing to be concerned about. It was really wild to me, um how much they don't want to talk about this topic. But not to be, well, yes, to be cynical and just blunt, like, there's levers of sorry, that was something like moving in the sink or something. Scared me for a second. There's all these levers of power of people, where this stuff exists. If you think just poor people are into this stuff, that doesn't make any sense. And we know that there's people like Epstein, and that had all this access to people. the including the president of the United States, not the current one so much, but like some Bill, um, which who knows everybody else, but we know Bill. um, and I mentioned this on a YouTube post, but think about the movie Kinsey that came out like was 2004 or something. Liam Neeson played Alfred Kinsey, and if you watch that film, you don't know about all the kitty diddling that's like in his research and where he got that stuff from. You don't know about all that if you watch that film. It's just like, oh, what's a fun little movie about the person who instigated our sex education and stuff and changed our minds about sex. I'm like, not for the better. Not for the better, I would say. Um, he did some really unethical stuff, and his data that he collected was collected from really unethical sources. There's files within the Kinsey Institute, that's some evidence of some really heinous stuff, and the people who are still over it, they're like, we're not giving this stuff over to the government. Well, one, they're like, we promised our folks who sit in this stuff that it would be private, but it's like with some of the stuff was crimes, and they're like, we would rather destroy everything before we let you take it. So that's someone that was celebrated and that was honored, and they made a big Hollywood production. Not something obscure. Again, it starred Liam Neeson, Mr. Take, Mr. Schindler's List. So that was someone into some really insidious sort of practices for what he allowed for science to destroy the sort of Victorian views on morality, I guess, that we used to have. And I don't think our world is better for it. I know our world isn't better for it. Anyway, let's move on. But again, worth seeing, go see it. A federal judge blocked the Biden administration, and it was in Missouri versus Biden, and said basically, you guys cannot communicate with these social media companies to coerce like people into not like issuing free speech, because the government, the Constitution, it limits the power of the federal government. They're not supposed to be blocking your free speech and stuff. And so they're not directly going to citizens and saying, hey, you can't say this, whatever. I mean, Biden might say, some remarks, on TV or something when he addresses the nation that you find questionable, that you raise your eyebrow to. But then, contacting social media companies to, get them to do their dirty work, judges are like, you can't do that. So New York Times and other places are upset about it. And they said that it could be, let me see if I have the yes, I do. So this is a screenshot of their article. Breaking news: a judge limited Biden's administration officials from contacting social media sites, a ruling that could curtail efforts to fight disinformation. A lot of things that these people said are disinformation are things that were true. So why phrase it that way instead of saying this is a major win for free speech, for the First Amendment? Why phrase it that way? Because there's certain things that they want blocked online that they don't have a problem, because they have a particular ideology at the New York Times and other places, so they don't mind shutting down speech like mine and speech like yours. If someone says something to them, they're ticked off. But like some the people, when Elon first like started taking over Twitter, they were he was some of the verification process or something, and people were upset about it. So you had some people who started like tweeting things out from like fake accounts or whatever, and Elon's like, okay, you guys are impersonating. I'm just gonna start like blocking people. And people were so mad that like some journalists and stuff got, I think, caught up in it. I think that's was the catalyst for it. Perhaps it was another event, but there were like journalists that started being like tempor- temporarily suspended, and they just had a hissy fit about it, and I thought it was so hilarious. We did cover it at the time, so that was a while ago. So I'm sorry if the details are a little fuzzy, but them freaking out about folks being temporarily banned after they were so happy to see other people silenced on the platform was Shatafornia. Getting off on other people's pain. If you've never heard that song, it's called Shatafornia. But here's a little bit of the opinion. The plaintiffs are likely to succeed on the merits in establishing that the government has used its power to silence the opposition to COVID-19 vaccines, opposition to COVID-19 making uh masking and lockdowns, opposition to lab leak theory of COVID-19, opposition to the validity of the 2020 election, opposition to President Biden's policies, statements that the Hunter Biden laptop story was true, in opposition to policies of the government officials in power. All were suppressed. It is quite telling that each example or category of suppressed speech was conservative in nature. This targeted suppression of conservative ideas is a perfect example of viewpoint discrimination of political speech. American citizens have the right to engage in free debate about the significant issues affecting the country. Although this case is still relatively young, and at this stage the court is only examining in terms of plaintiff's likelihood of success on the merits, the evidence produced thus far depicts an almost dystopian scenario. During the COVID-19 pandemic, a period perhaps best categorized, characterized by widespread doubt and uncertainty, the United States government seems to have assumed the role similar to the Orwellian Ministry of Truth. And we know it. Sorry for the stumbling. It's small on my screen. um, yeah, we know that. We lived it. Maybe some of you were blocked on social media. Maybe you had a post that was taken down, and you can post, banned on Facebook, banned on YouTube. I had my bans in my day. I got a strike last week over an abortion interview. That wasn't last week. I streamed the week before. I couldn't stream, and that interview with Deborah Tilden, by the way, is on Rumble if you haven't checked it out. But and that was an important conversation, one that people don't, I guess, want us to have, but they're enacting on YouTube a similar policy, I guess, they had with COVID. And if you say something that goes against the WHO on that topic, then they just see it as disinformation. Did they tell me what I said that didn't align with who? No, they did not. There were no specifics. So they don't want you to question certain things. I'm not surprised. I could see it kind of trending that way. It's something that I forewarned. If I could find, I don't know, if I care enough to go find the clips of me saying, "Hey, I think this is going to happen," then I would do it. But um, it's something that I've warned about and said would happen. So um, but during COVID, absolutely, we knew that people couldn't say certain things that was in their policies, like on YouTube and different places, that your stuff would be flagged, or you would get strikes and whatnot. The Hunter Biden laptop is a really big deal, especially because the government knew that it was true, but still felt the need to imply to social media that it was Russian disinformation. You had, Biden's people arranged for a letter for all these, professionals to sign on to it and say that it reeks of like Russian disinformation, and when that wasn't true. And people were like live, in real time confirming different elements from emails and stuff from the laptop, and people still wanted to pretend like it wasn't true. You had Jack Posobiec who kept tweeting, like, I don't know, it seemed like every day at Jake Tapper, like, "Hey, I have a copy of the hard drive. Would you like to see the hard drive?" And people didn't really want to take him up on that offer because people didn't want to report the truth because they didn't want the people to know it. So I saw that people were sharing a video of Joe Rogan talking about how the media basically colluded for 2020 to get the result. I didn't have time to watch that, but I can assume what he said, because we know that it's true. Even the Times put out an article about how all these people came together to ensure the election or whatever. But they obviously wanted it to tilt in a particular way, and everyone does. Everyone has a preference, but it's funny to me that people talk about Trump and the threat to democracy and how they think that him as an individual can cause so much damage, but it's not him alone. What about everything that everyone was willing to do to stop the man? You don't think that that's damaging to our democracy? You don't think it's damaging to our democracy and our institutions that he got to pick 3 Supreme Court justices who are just, following the law, or just trying to interpret the Constitution. Um, but they think that's bad, and so they're talking about packing the courts so they can get some kind of advantage and have buying, like, I don't know, multiply Ketanji Jackson, who doesn't know what a real woman was and who was also lenient on um, kid diddler. When, as a judge and stuff. So that's what they want, to just pack the courts and rig the game in that sort of way. But I don't like all of Trump's rhetoric surrounding the 2020 election, but he definitely did get a raw deal. Like, some of the things that he says, I think, are blatantly untrue. But he I like to phrase it as he legitimately lost a rigged election. That's how I would phrase it. I know other people wouldn't phrase it that way, and I don't think he would phrase it that way. He'd maybe still like the tweet or something if I said that or whatever. Um, but I think that's the accurate way to talk about it. Um, so if they have to stop the government from interfering, from deciding what's information, real information, and disinformation, misinformation, whatever, I think that's a good thing. We'll see how this progresses. The Biden White House is going to fight it. They're like, oh, we think this is a wrong ruling, but the press secretary wouldn't say much more than that. I was catching it live a little bit today when they were talking about it. She didn't initially. She's like, we think they're wrong, but DOJ and other folks are gonna. She said she claimed she didn't want to jump ahead of them, so she kind of sidestepped it a little bit. But we'll see where this goes further in the courts, if it will or won't or whatever. But the government is not supposed to limit our speech. Just I don't like, when people get on TV and on social media in different places and they lie through their teeth. There's some people who are wrong. There's a lot of false information about a lot of different topics. And there's things that people are so confident about that they're just blatantly wrong. Like, I said in a reply to someone about, well, I put out a video on Shorts, um and I mentioned children being aborted who had Down syndrome, and someone in the comments said, well, I think people should be able to do that. And I was like, the people with Down syndrome report to be like, have the highest, like, satisfaction or happiness with their lives. And I'm like, that's really sad to say that. And I'm like, if you don't want to raise your baby, like, you can take them to a police station or a fire station. Like, you don't have to abort them. And a lot of people jumped on, was like, that's really awful to, and people said, my brother, my son, my kid, whoever in their lives who had Down syndrome and function well and live good lives. And so people were really offended by the comment. But someone replied to me and they're like, people's have, how dare you generalize? I'm like, oh, I didn't generalize, really. I mean, I'm saying this, there's data on this. I didn't make it up. I'm not saying that's everyone's experience, but I didn't make it. That's, I didn't listen. It's, yeah, I guess it's technically a stat. I didn't say the number, but um they, as far as like happiness and stuff, people with Down syndrome are like the highest sort of, I think, group that report that. So but what really got to me was she said, like, and Why would you take the baby? It's like, are you kidding? This isn't like a movie or something. You just take a baby to a police station or a fire station. Those people have their own families and their own lives. And I was just like, do you not know about safe haven laws? And a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. But you could look up what they are in your states or whatever. But you could go to, and it's not just in the U.S. who has safe haven laws. So you can look what they are in your country if they have them and stuff. But you could go drop a baby if you just newly had a baby. You could go drop them off at the police station or a hospital or fire station or somewhere, and they will take your baby to some place where they can help to find a home for the baby, and no questions asked, and they don't have to get your number or ask you any kind of questions or anything. You could just let the baby live and go about your business. You could do that, you know? So without the extra questions for the added shame or someone trying to convince you or whatever, if that's what you want to do. Right? So but if you drop the baby off at the police station or the fire station doesn't adopt the baby. Maybe someone in there will want to, but they don't become like an orphan of the fire station. And when toddler gets old enough, just slides down the pole and has fun with this Dalmatian dog with a helmet or so. Nobody does that. Like, that's not what that means. So I was just flabbergasted. I'm like, you think I'm making a movie? Are you watching too many movies? But they're so confident. They're so confident, and I'm just baffled. I'm just baffled. But that was someone speaking out of ignorance. Something that's like particular disinformation, a manipulation, a topic. The Guardian, I think it was, who put out an article with pictures of like, this is what a pregnancy really looks like, um, or a fetus looks like at this particular amount of weeks. And they got it from this pro-abortion like network, and there it's a like a mic it's in a petri dish or whatever, and you just basically see like fluffy kind of like tissue, and you can't see a baby. And people are like, "Oh my gosh!" And all these pro-choice people were sharing it like, "We knew all these people were lying when they showed us pictures of embryos and fetuses." And even pro-choice people were like, "No, I've had a miscarriage before, or when you have an abortion or something, and like you take the pill and the baby comes, like you can see it with your," because they were making it seem like you can't see the baby with your naked eye at like 9-10 weeks, which just it isn't true. It's blatantly not true. It's not true. And but so many people were sharing it continuously. Someone like shared it with me as evidence, like, "Oh, you think it's a baby?" And they just showed the tissue. And it was just a couple weeks ago. I'm like, y'all are still doing this to manipulate people back from the reality of what it just actually looks like. So the reason why it looks like tissue in a petri dish, well, let me ask you this question: how do you think it got in the petri dish? How do you, because fetuses don't don't just materialize in petri dishes. So how do you think it got there? if if we sucked you through a tube that was smaller than your entire body and then clean out the guts, what do you think you'd look like? But this was huge propaganda that was like all over Instagram, and it was all over TikTok. I don't know how much it like was all over YouTube and stuff. But it was definitely all over TikTok. It was crazy. And the Guardian pushed this crazy thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go look up like secular pro-life's argument their article about it and stuff. And they debunk it pretty well, and they go into like the background of the folks, but um and then actually have put in the photo a fetus to scale of what they're showing. It was just so crazy. And if you guys saw the debate that Michael Knowles had with Bronte something. I think her first name was Bronte. But she came on a show. She's like, "I'm going to show your viewers what abortion really looks like." And she holds up the picture of the petri dish, and Michael Knowles just like kind of smiles. He's like, "How did it get in the petri dish?" he just dismantled. She's so serious, like, I'm gonna show your audience, like, and she accused him of, like, being ignorant and appealing to authority that did, of not even having like proper authority. Because she's like, I'm with the medical experts, and we learned this in school, blah blah blah. And she's like, I'm gonna show your audience the truth, not propaganda. And she whips out a photo of a petri dish, and he's like, that's like looking at a crime scene. But that's what people do. But it's okay for people to do that on social media and different places. But if you say something that's blatantly untrue to manipulate people um from knowing a true real thing, then that's misinformation. And the government should shut you down, and social media companies should shut you down. So it go as the court said, it goes one way, it continuously goes one way. And if anything, just butt out and let us try to correct the record. It was a lot of people worked to try to correct the record and debunk this stuff, and they did. And there's accounts that they push that will speak lies, that will maybe travel faster than the truth can, but we will try to correct the record. And if we're wrong or whatever, people will try to correct the record with us. Let us have debate, let us have conversations, let us have debate. Some people be wrong, some people will be right. And some people will spread lies. Some people will say things that are untrue unintentionally, and it'll get around. That's just how information works, and communication works, and rumors and gossip and whatever. But I'd rather have the chaos of our words than the government being able to have their tyranny and oppressing what we can say, because it will sway a particular way, because that's our evidence that it sways a particular way. So last thing I want to talk about, I know that I'm going a bit long. That person, she said that person had to be young. um I About the petri dish, or the petri dish person was a college student. She's in med school and stuff. If you're talking about the person with the safe haven laws, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Maybe maybe. I hate to kind of discriminate against young people. Because I feel like I wouldn't say dumb things like that if I was young. I know I wouldn't say dumb things like that if when I was young I didn't. Um, but man, if I'm on TikTok or place and there's a really really ridiculous comment, I'm like, you're a kid. Like I can tell if you're under the age of 20, if you're 23 and under, by what you type. And I don't want to put down all youngins, because there's some smart people out there. There are, and as I said, I was a pretty mature, wise young woman, and I um would not say things that people say on social media. But another thing before I switch topics, parents, if your kids have social media, make sure that you're following them, or they don't even know that you're following them, but just make sure that you find a way to follow them so you can know what they're saying online. Because I promise you that some of them are utterly embarrassing you. They're utterly embarrassing you as far as their lack of knowledge, and also some of their morality is questionable, and it makes people question, like, who raised you. And so if you don't want them to embarrass you, you should be like, bro, you need to take that down. That was not appropriate. So oh, the fire station thing, maybe it was a young person, I don't know. But it was wild, though. It was wild. um so I wanted to mention um this kind of rabbit hole that I saw about this asexual woman on Twitter. And so, you know, she said asexual people deserve equal rights. We deserve legal recognition. We deserve protection. And she was thankful to go out in March, you know, um, to be part of the change. And if you're probably like, what do you mean asexually? We don't reproduce asexually. So what does that even mean? So if you're asexual, I guess you're not interested in a sexual relationship. So um you know I don't know why you just don't say celibate. Because everything's got to be an identity, and there's different layers. Because there's um they say ace. There's different layers to the asexual category, and there's different flags as well. I don't remember what they're all called. um I did see like a graphic or whatever that had all the flags and stuff, so that's why I know this stuff. But there is a version of asexual, of people who are asexual uh because of trauma. So they have a particular flag and identity about their trauma that has caused them to be asexual. I don't know why you want a flag for that. Just a walking flag that says, I have emotional problems, and it has my trauma has led me to this point, and so defined me in this kind of way. I don't know why you'd want a flag and identification of that, other than it, it's such a serious thing to go through, but I don't understand why you want that label and that identification, other than a, the attention makes you feel good, and I don't know how to say that, not be mean. um, but if you have a flag and you're letting people know that is your identity, I guess it is what it is. Now I don't know what her background is. All I saw this tweet, and I saw it before, but I saw it pop up again because Blair White retweeted it. It was like, these people want attention so bad. um so why do you need like a big identity and a flag, and you're fighting for equality for ace, for being asexual and stuff? And so people are like, looking at her garb, how she's dressed, and they're kind of like, I don't know if this is all adding up. And so people said the obvious thing, like, why is she dressed like that? And then people were in like the different Twitter threads were talking like, oh, you think because she's wearing fishnets that she's sexual or something? No fishnets, no. She is kind of wearing like BDSM or BDM or whatever it's called, like garb with the harness and the thing, and her titas are kind of all hanging out and stuff. But that doesn't mean that you want to go and sleep with somebody necessarily. I think it kind of implies that you want some attention, but um so people are asking obvious questions like, what kind of rights do you guys not have that everyone else has? And that's a big question for everyone, I guess, on the spectrum of the alphabet mafia. What is it? What particular rights that you think that you don't have, that no one else, that everyone else has, that you don't, that people are particularly discriminating against you for being, whatever, right? I have free speech, you have free speech. Like, she's out there, marching, protesting, whatever, has that right. First Amendment. Well, actually, no, I don't know where. Did it say where it took place? So I think about it. I don't. I it's kind of little for me to see. Um, people have the right to say things, express themselves, whatever. Um, you're not in any way sort of oppressed. We would think so. There's people grilling each other, like, and there's people who are progressives in the different Twitter threads saying, "I'm genuinely trying to understand, because I don't understand how, like, what exactly are you fighting for from a like a civil liberties kind of standpoint." And I don't think anyone really like got there to like legitimize that opinion, that there was some kind of lack in a civil rights position, but more like things socially. So I found a thread um from someone that people kept sharing, from different plights, that asexual people have, that I think is a little wild. um so they said it is the 8-year anniversary of Obergefell, sorry if I'm not saying, versus Hodges, which legalized same sex marriage in the US. It is a natural day to celebrate how far we've come, and we should. But I implore everyone to also acknowledge that same sex marriage equality does not serve all queer people. Far too many cis gay folks and allies think that same sex marriage equality is the end all be all in the fight for queer civil rights, and this could not be further from the truth. Obergefell set a new precedent for marriage in this country that wasn't so new at all. Obergefell's idea that marriage is that a gay couple can wed so long as it looks like a traditional straight marriage. Their marriage can be and must be sexual, romantic, monogamous, probably with the intention of having children and being lifelong. Love is love. It is not the radical revolutionary legislation that it often gets credit for. On the contrary, it doubled down and reinforced pre existing social norms what marriage and family must look like. It may have even made it harder to fight for platonic or polyamorous marriage. We discuss the current attack on platonic marriage by the religious right in this country, as well as the implications of Obergefell and versus Hodges on asexual and aromantic marriage at length on the podcast with sources in our show notes. So so I guess trigger warning to you folks here. So some time ago, when the marriage Respect for Marriage Act came out, there was a conversation that people like, I guess, the Daily Wire and other conservatives were having about marriage and why it was wrong for Biden to sign that. And there were some people like Chloe Cole, for example. Chloe Cole is a detransitioner. She's been a bit of a darling in the movement. Speaking about how she had puberty blockers and was socially conditioned and had puberty blockers pretty young and had surgery to chop off her breast when she was still a minor, and how she regrets and how she was a the doctors would say things like to her parents like, oh, well, do you want your child to unalive themselves? And so they're emotionally manipulated into agreeing to what happened to her, and so she has deep regret about what happened. So she speaks up a lot, but she said that um she didn't understand why conservatives wanted to like go die on this hill for like traditional marriage, and there are other things to focus on, and it's just not a good thing. So I made the case that of why I think they should still fight for it. Now, I think that two adults can make contracts with each other, and people you can't stop people from having different relationships that they want to have. And what people were pitching as like the reason why people needed marriage to go see their loved ones in the hospital and other things like that, I think people should be able to do. um but do I think that it's kind of the same? I don't. I think that I agree. I think it was Alan Keyes who said marriage pro in like procreation in marriage in principle without like reproduction or procreation is irrelevant or something along those lines. And he said it when he was having a debate with Obama. And he said they push back on him. They're like, what about people who aren't having, are old and can't or people who can't produce or something? And he said, no, it's in principle, not a matter of something that's impossible. A woman, even though she may not be able to, she's not fertile or whatever, doesn't mean that women can't produce or whatever. So a lot of our understanding of marriage and families and stuff have been centered around making a family and stuff. So I do make the case in the article that ex- expanding the definition of marriage gets you to arguments that this person has made, like, well, why can't we have like multiple people within the marriage and stuff? So they're saying that Obergefell just allowing same-sex couples to get married isn't radical enough. And now that we've changed this definition of marriage, they're even upset about the idea of it being permanent, which we did like get rid of that idea with the no fault divorce and stuff, and it's radically changed marriage. And you know, not necessarily a good direction if you ask me, but I think there's been some repercussions that haven't, always been good. I think there's reasons to get divorced, don't get me wrong, but part of the permanentness of marriage is a good thing, but this person who is asexual, or they're speaking up for asexual people at the very least, are saying that our idea of marriage needs to be expanded. So if it's not an institution that's even surrounded in people having relations, what do you want to get married for? Like, why not just have friendships? You can nothing is stopping you from having a roommate. Do you just want your taxes joined together? Because you can still be two people of the same sex or opposite sex and living together, and I guess you could still get married and just not consummate and not tell anyone. That's not anyone's business unless you decide to tell everyone about it. How would I know? How would we know unless you want to wave your asexual flag, which you obviously do? So I I found the article. I'm gonna play the Alan Keyes. Was it Alan Keyes? Yes, it was Alan Keyes. So I don't think I did a very elegant job kind of explaining it. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this clip.
Mr. Keyes, on the Channel 7 debate last Thursday night, you said, and I'm quoting you, where procreation is in principle impossible, marriage is irrelevant. You went on to say it was irrelevant and not needed. What about marriage between people who are well beyond their childbearing age? Irrelevant, not needed?
No, it's simply a misunderstanding. The word in principle means relating to the definition of, not relating to particular circumstances. So if an apple has a worm in it, the worm is not part of the definition of the apple. It doesn't change what the apple is in principle. So the fact...
It retains its appleness.
If it retains... It retains... To act as if concepts are laughable means that you want to be irrational. Human beings reason...
You said it was irrelevant
Human
and not needed.
beings reason by means of concepts and definition. We also make laws by means of definitions. And if you don't know how to operate with respect for those definitions, you can't make the law. An individual who is impotent or another who is infertile does not change the definition of marriage in principle. Because between a man and a woman, in principle, procreation is always possible. And it is that possibility which gave rise to the institution of marriage in the first place. As a matter of law, as a matter of law and government. Principle. But when it is impossible, as between two males or two females, you're talking about something that's not just incidentally impossible, it's impossible in principle. And that means that if you say that that's a marriage, you are saying marriage can be understood in principle apart from procreation. You have changed its definition in such a way as, in fact, to destroy the necessity for the institution. Since the only reason it has existed in human societies and civilizations was to regulate, from a social point of view, the obligations and responsibilities attendant upon procreation. So when you start playing games in this way, you are actually acting as if the institution has no basis independent of your own art.
So, yeah, I think he had a good argument back then, and I think it's still I guess it's, doesn't really matter too much today. It is what it is, been redefined, but the point of me making that argument, bringing up Chloe Cole, was that I could kind of see how different things like that opens the door to the point of where it kind of we're evolved in the trans issues. So it's a long article. I recommend that you go check it out and go read it, because it breaks down a lot of different history and stuff. But if marriage isn't, if you keep tweaking it in such a way, this person is now saying like, well, why can't it be multiple people? It's wrong that it's not multiple people. It's wrong that you expect people to not cheat on each other or whatever. Or I guess not, maybe they don't consider it to be cheating or whatever, if everyone has agreed upon like that you can go dip around and stuff. that they reject monogamous relationships and other things like that. And they don't even think that you should be having an intimate physical relationship, not because you can't, but because I guess you don't want to, just as an asexual person. And so do you, what is marriage to you if you keep twisting it and bending it in all sorts of different ways? Is it really just you want your taxes filed jointly? um what's the purpose of the institution if we keep going to a point where they're trying to take it? Like if five people can get together in one place and raise kids in some kind of like hub, what's the point of the institution at all? Right? And people made the argument, if you change it this particular time, what is stopping everyone else from making that argument? And so I just thought it was funny because I did say that, and so you have all these other people saying like, yeah, we have gay marriage, but we need to make sure that the asexuals and the polyamorous folks and all those folks can get in on the action. So there is no sort of end goal, end game, because they're saying these gay people being domesticated in a way that a straight couple would act, but just be the same sex is I get what heteronormative still. um Another thing that these asexuals, I guess, in the comments are saying we're fighting for is this idea that they need to be fixed, or but I mean, if someone's trying to force you to like like some kind of sexual action on you, of course it's wrong, and it's also illegal. If you're talking about people just trying to talk to you and convince you of things, people are allowed to speak to you. Like someone said, oh, y'all just proving the point because you're invalidating our feelings. And I'm like, you don't have a right to not feel invalidated. As a matter of fact, we have the opposite right. We have the we have the freedom of speech. So if people want to say this doesn't make sense or belittle your feel, yeah, that's mean or whatever, I guess. But it actually, some of you need to be your feelings need to be invalidated. I'm sorry, some of you guys are weirdos, but we have that right. We have that right to express ourselves. My sister said it sounds like sex cult stuff. When they're saying they're not having sex though, they're asexual. So I don't understand the logic of that. Again, if you want to marry someone and not have sex with them, you can do that. How would anyone know? How would anyone know? Unless you tell us, or it's not our business, I guess. If people get married all the time and they're not having sex, when the things start to sour, or you have Bill de Blasio and his wife they're separating, but they're not divorcing. They're just gonna live separately and see other people, so they're not having sleeping around with each other. So I don't get that, but you know but folks make all kind of different arrangements in their marriages and stuff. So this is people reaching for things, I don't know, to feel special, I guess. There's not anything that I've been able to find where there's some kind of legitimate right or something that they're being denied. um but a lot of people like to feel like a lot of people like to feel like they're a victim because it makes them feel special. And I don't know if there's nothing of merit or other kind of ways that people feel like they can be special, but everyone has some kind of status on this, hierarchy of power, and especially with the victim, Olympics and other things like that. So they're trying to get in themselves. And if they're people who, I don't know, have a low libido, or they have some kind of trauma that leads them to not wanting to be sexually active, or maybe they just haven't found the right person, because I saw people who used to identify as asexual and they're not anymore because they found somebody. Maybe you're just not interested because you haven't met the right, maybe you're legitimately not interested because you haven't met the right person. But or maybe you're just choosing to be celibate. and we just call it being celibate. But it's interesting that if I say like, hey, you guys can be celibate if you want to, I'm like, people have literally told me that's impossible. Literally told me it's impossible, which isn't true, obviously. Um, but there's people who have a flag who are asexual, because they're not apparently having sex. So I don't know, when the left says that it's fine, like when after Roe v. Wade passed, I mean was overturned, and there's all these women like, we're gonna teach those men, we're gonna go on sex strikes. I'm like, oh, so y'all can, keep them legs closed then, huh? So you don't have to have sex with them, huh? I already said that, but you guys said it was crazy when I mentioned it. But when you guys mention it, it's like a brilliant idea. It's a strategy. Okay. Okay. I see how it is. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Again, please go see Sound of Freedom. It was a really good movie. It was worth seeing. I'm gonna probably go down a rabbit hole watching some interviews with Jim Caviezel and stuff, and try to learn a little bit about the experience they had trying to get it made, because they said they ran into a lot of roadblocks, and I might like to learn more about that. But yeah, go buy a ticket and take somebody along with you. And again, it doesn't show the abuse like up front, or it like shows it enough for you to be disturbed, sure, but you're not watching I don't know, something that you'd find on the um dark web or something. It's not like that. So I appreciate that it didn't go for shock value. I mean, it's shocking, but they didn't do what they didn't go an unnecessary route like other stuff would go to an unnecessary sort of point to shock the viewers. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Cost to stream, run my website, all that stuff. So if you can support in that kind of way, I very much do appreciate it. You guys can also send like super thanks, and we're gonna get into late, so I'm assuming there'll be no super chat or anything like that. But just so you know, I am monetized on YouTube and on Facebook. You can send stars, so you guys can support in that kind of way. But the easiest way is to go to the website, to go to the donate page, and to participate in that way. So whether it's a gift of $20, $10, maybe $50 more. It's very much appreciated. Also, check out different merch that we have at blacktnews.com. Like my book, of course. Well, you can go find it on Amazon, but of course, God Blatantly Gets Abortion covers theology and science and philosophy. I know a lot of you guys really like some of my posts and my articles and stuff. So if you like my writing there, you'll like it in book form and stuff, lots of resources and other things like that. So check that out. You guys can also check out other different merch that we have at the store. Like I was sporting the shirt yesterday. I'm not the victim you're looking for. So go ahead and check out the store. God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.